welcome back to Let's Play Great Ace Attorney 2. This is VDiffuser. In our last episode, we found out that Gossip, or Hugh Boone, was really Daily Vigil, and he knows something about the Professor execution. He was actually blamed for it, and threw himself out the window, which resulted in his memory loss. Oh boy. I think it's time we figured out the rest of this case. Don't you? I still can't quite believe what just happened. I know. I inquired with the bailiff after the court session was adjourned, and it seems Mr. Vigil was taken to the hospital to recover. Right. 10 years ago now, Mr. Vigil attempted to commit suicide by jumping out of the window of the prison governor's office. But ever since then, he's completely blocked the memory of those events from his mind. Nobody knew his secret. Not his family, not even the man himself. But I forced it out into the open. Was it wrong of me to do that? Did I overstep the mark, I wonder? Bruno! Oh, Iris. You were miles away. Anyway, I brewed a fresh pot of soothing tea for you. Oh, thank you. You and Susie have had an exhausting day so far, haven't you? Oh. Thank you, Iris. How thoughtful of you. Do you happen to know where Mr. Sholmes is? Oh, I thought that was her. When we came out of the courtroom back into the defendant's antechamber, he disappeared. Oh no, I don't know. He just suddenly sprang to his feet and left. All he said was, "I must leave." I wonder if he's pursuing the mystery of Inspector Gregson's death. Well, you know what Hurley's always saying, don't you? There are mysteries in this world that should perhaps never be solved. For the construction of a solution comes only at the expense of destruction at something else. What does that mean? He knows very well that when you open someone else's old wounds, you often open your own too. But he just can't take his own advice and leave well alone. Solving mysteries is too important to him. That's so true. But that's what I like about Hurley after all. I suppose that's the lot of a great detective in some ways. So then, let's have tea, and I'll give you a hand. Oh, do you have time, Iris? Yes, I finished this month's manuscript at last, with barely a day to spare before the deadline. Oh, I'm so looking forward to it. A brand new story to read in the adventures of Sherlock Sholmes. You know, I always hide Hurley's violin in the days before I have a deadline. You do? Poor Mr. Sholmes. I'm sure that's very wise, Iris. How sensible of you. Now then, my dear fellows, let's make a plan of action before we continue our investigation. Alrighty. So, how'd it go in court this morning? Well, we still don't know the truth about what really happened, but one thing's increasingly clear. Lord Van Zeeks definitely didn't do it. Oh, goody! Yes, that's right. We managed to uncover several new facts as well. Oh, really? And there was another development too. Kazuma. Yes, it's quite clear now. But Kazuma-sama is not himself. The way he's acting, it's almost as if he's possessed. I know. I mean, at the end of the proceedings earlier, he was like a bloodhound the way he was chasing down Mr. Vigil's forgotten past. He's not normally so mercilessly persistent. Well, this is about about his father? What's going on in his head, I wonder. I really need to sit down with Kazuma and try to understand what he's going through. The Reaper's innocence. If Gregson really was murdered the day before his body was discovered, then Lord Van Zieks has to be innocent, you see. What? The day before? Well, that should be easy enough to work out. Just by examining the corpse, surely. Yes, you would expect so, but curiously, no time of death was included in the autopsy report. That is curious. There are still unanswered questions about Lord Van Zieks, though, aren't there? Do you mean... I mean, what was he doing there on Fresno Street that day in the first place? Well, according to the man's testimony... he said he was investigating Inspector Gregson, didn't he? And it turns out that little room was actually the Inspector's secret office. Ooh, that sounds like it has all the makings of a wonderfully devilish plot. But then, why was that notice board in there covered in all these particular papers? Papers about cases with a link to the Reaper. I'm starting to get a bad feeling about all this. Oh dear, that sounds more like something horribly devilish. We must start by looking into Inspector Gregson's movements of late. I never imagined that I might have to be investigating an inspector's movements. Well, according to the entry in his diary, he was carrying out an incognito investigation of the Red-Headed League the day before his death. Oh, you mean he was doing the same as Hurley? Well, Mr. Sholmes was trying to apply, whereas the inspector was supposed to be investigating. I do wish it had been the other way around. Anyway, as it turns out, the inspector who went to investigate the Red-Headed League that day wasn't actually Gregson at all. It was Mr. Vigil, in possession of Gregson's identification. You know what that sounds like to me? Establishing an alibi. Oh my! Yes, you're absolutely right, Iris. But why would Gregson need an alibi? It would appear that the inspector had something to do that he wished to keep secret. I don't believe it. I always thought he was just a harmless lover of fish and chips. But perhaps they were seasoned with something a little more potent than salt and vinegar. Give a little cayenne pepper. I think perhaps we should try to move away from food analogies. Well, anyway, if Lord Van Zieks felt the need to investigate Gregson, I agree. We must try to find out what he knows. Mr. Vigil's condition. Alright, here we go. Vigil, you say? Isn't that the name of the lady who came to visit Hurley yesterday? That's right. To ask Mr. Sholmes if he would help her to find her missing husband. Only Mr. Sholmes completely passed the buck to us. Actually, didn't you say that Mr. Vigil had been taken to the hospital? You know which one? Ah, it's St. Sinners. Again! I'm starting to wonder if all the other hospitals in London have closed down. But that's amazing, Ryuno. You found the lady's husband already. Well, I suppose I have. By accident. And 10 years ago, while Mr. Vigil was the chief warder at the prison, he was responsible for overseeing the professor's incarceration. No! So when the convict escaped, he was held responsible and immediately dismissed. Sometimes I really don't want to grow up. There's more. For 10 years after that, while he was ostensibly working as a peddler, he also had another secret job. He was paid by Gregson to be his stand-in, to impersonate the inspector. To impersonate Gregson? But why? I have no idea. Ginny was right. I'm starting to think all adults are up to no good now. Including you, Runo. I haven't paid anyone to impersonate me. That means he has ties to the Professor and to Inspector Gregson, though. I do think we ought to pay a visit to Mr. Vigil, don't you? Alright, back to St. Sinners. Well, I think it's clear what we need to do, isn't it? Let us investigate, my dear fellows. If anyone has anything to hide, my special Wilson shooting iron will soon set them straight. That water pistol? It's stuffed full of piping hot extra special blend of mine. And I'm quite sure it will be very effective. I'd better be careful not to hide anything. Well, it feels a little strange Mr. Sholmes is nowhere to be seen, but still. Let's go and see what we can find out. Yes! Alrighty. Time for us to move. We gotta go to the Lord Chief Justice's office. Arguments, Prosecutor Asogi. You will continue with the trial exactly as I instructed. Is that clear? Perfectly. It's Kazuma-sama. Defying Lord Strongheart by the sound of it. He never did know when to back down. On your way now, Asogi. Yes. My lord. Kazuma. You left without saying a word. And there you are. Yes? What are you doing here? Oh, well, I was just hoping to ask you a few questions, if you wouldn't mind. I wanted Van Zeek's trial concluded today. But Prosecutor Asogi's unwelcome inquiries are going to make it take longer than necessary. Unwelcome inquiries? As a result, I'm losing even more precious time. Yes. Currently, 2 hours, 55 minutes, and 41 seconds. 42, 43. Then we must resolve everything before 3 hours have passed, Mr. Naruhodo. In a miraculous not even 5 minutes. Anyway, I can't let the man's obvious bad mood put me off. I need information. The Reaper. Does Prosecutor Asogi believe that Lord Van Zeeks is the Reaper? I wouldn't know. It was 10 years ago, in that fateful closed trial, that Lord Van Zeeks made a name for himself amongst the judiciary. But the next trial he fought, he lost. It meant the ringleader of a criminal organization was acquitted, thanks to all the jurors being under duress. But that's awful. The man's freedom was short-lived. He lasted just 3 days. Yes, let me see. He died in a rock slide at his place of work, I believe. Correct. That was the inauguration of the Reaper of the Bailey. And people believe Lord Van Zeeks was responsible. He was brought to trial himself, but it was shown to have been an accident. Yes. So he must have had a solid alibi then. Nevertheless, the mysterious deaths continued. In total, 16 persons perished in unusual circumstances, ostensibly at the hand of the Reaper. That's a long run of coincidences. Yes. Well, the Reaper's true identity may very well be revealed by this trial. And the impact that revelation would have on the British public cannot be understated. Is that why it's a closed trial? Precisely. This country hasn't seen a closed trial for 10 years. So the last one was the professor's. The trial of Ryunosuke. Correct. Actually, we heard that originally. You were going to prosecute that trial yourself, Lord Strongheart. Van Zieks entreated me to relinquish the prosecution to him, that he might avenge his brother's death. And here we are, 10 years later, with the son of the man Van Zieks had condemned, now looking to avenge his father's death in the same way. They do say that what goes around comes around. However, it would seem that the new young prosecutor is harboring some ulterior motive as well. Kazuma is? I like my organization to run smoothly, in the exact manner that I prescribe. Yes. As with the giant clock in here, I won't tolerate a single cog being out of step with the others. So that's what all the gears are about in here. If the young man refuses to mesh with the other parts of my great machine, I will be forced to take steps. What do you mean? Not something with which you need to concern yourself. I sense a death threat. In any case, all your questions will be answered tomorrow. Now, I shall have to ask you to excuse me. As of this moment, I've been delayed from attending my next meeting by precisely 3 hours. Oh my, that is a long time. And I hold you entirely responsible. Excuse me? Even though we miraculously managed to fit everything into not even 5 minutes? I wonder if you might agree to us, talking with Prosecutor Ryunosuke. Discussions between the defense and the prosecution outside the courtroom are generally frowned upon. However, I will make an exception to this case. Now go. You can find him in his office. Thank you. Suspicious. Alrighty, let's go see him at once. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. We got things we gotta do first. Kazuma's my best friend in the world, but I'm really not at all sure I know how to talk to him at this moment. We gotta go to prison next. Alright, there he is in the back. Lord Van Zieks is reading, look. He doesn't seem like he wants visitors, does he? But he must have noticed we're here, surely. Apparently not. Oh, now he does. What do you Nipponese want? That's no way to greet the lawyer who's trying his best to prove your innocence, is it? Perhaps not. I apologize. So what can I do for you, Mr. Naruhodo? Lord Van Zieks, speaking earnestly. How the folk will lift over London for the first time in months tomorrow. This does feel very, very strange. I must say, I was impressed. Oh? Well, thank you. Not by you. By your fellow Nipponese. Your prosecutor friend. Oh, I see. Yes. It's sardonic, don't you think? For a man such as me, so loathing of the Nipponese, to be entirely at the mercy of the two of you. I suppose It's retribution for having played the part of the Reaper all these years. Played the part? The Reaper's identity. You once told me you gladly allowed people to believe you were the Reaper, because it helped to reduce the amount of serious crime that took place in London. If keeping quiet and playing the part benefits the cause, a cause I myself am committed to pursuing, then why would I choose to say anything? But the henchman of a criminal killed by the Reaper attacked you only the other day. And that was just the most recent of many attempts on your life, wasn't it? Someone is clearly profiting from your silence about this. Someone is using you. Yeah, someone sure is. Believe me, ever since the Reaper first appeared, I've been doing my utmost to expose him. Or rather, expose the organization. It's a whole organization? It's inconceivable that all of those accidents were orchestrated by one man. Yeah, that is a little hard to believe. No, the Reaper always appears to have very accurate information about the accused in each case. Which can only mean that somebody at Scotland Yard is involved. You can't mean... It's taken me many years, but I finally identified the central figure in this Reaper organization. It's Tobias Gregson. No! No! Gregson, the Reaper? Holy shit. So, the real reason you're investigating Inspector Gregson is because you intended to expose him as the Reaper. As I said, the Reaper of the Bailey is no single person. It's a highly secret organization with close ties to Scotland Yard. But there's no doubt, that Gregson was a key member of that organization. I don't believe it. Are you saying that that he was behind all those awful criminals, meaning that Gregson didn't do the dirty work himself? Oh. He was the tactician. His job was to covertly investigate the Marks and plot their assassinations. In order to do that without arousing suspicion, he regularly needed a firm alibi. Which is where Mr. Vigil came in, posing as the inspector. Vigil knows nothing of the Reaper. But the room he rents on Fresno Street was almost certainly the headquarters of the operation. Gregson would have met the assassin there for briefings. So we don't actually know who carried out the killings then. Actually, I do have a name. You what? Well, if you can name the man, you have the true identity of the Reaper already then. Or, if I can name the woman. Don't tell me. Oh. She's a young woman by the name of Assassin. Of course it would be her. Wait, what? Shin? Her. Miss Assassin. The true name of a terrifying killer I know only too well. She came to Japan posing as a visiting student and murdered Dr. John H. Wilson. And just when it seemed that diplomatic protection would help her escape Japan and conviction, the mysterious woman was herself murdered in a small summer beach hut. And that woman was actually the Reaper of the Bailey. Mr. Naruhodo, this perhaps isn't the place to discuss. No, of course not. We can't mention it here. The fact that she killed Dr. John H. Wilson. Because Iris doesn't know, and it's very likely that the man himself was her father. Assassin. I should let father know at once. I agree. Wow. Kazuma, isn't it? Kazuma Sogi. You say he's a friend of yours. My best friend. He's the whole reason I came to Britain. It was all on his merits. I have nothing but respect for him. Yes, I understand that only the best students are elected for such opportunities. And I had a fine demonstration of how sharp he is in the proceedings earlier today. He missed nothing. In fact, his flawless performance was very much reminded me of his father, Ryunosuke, the professor. It's true that the aristocracy at the time was the root of numerous grave societal problems. They were abusing their power, playing with the common man as pawns, in politics, in economics, in war. In many ways, Asogi was carving out a canker from a society that we British couldn't deal with ourselves. I see. But that's precisely why it makes no sense. Clint Van Zieks was a noble and upstanding man. He wasn't corrupt. Why did that damn Nipponese have to go and take my brother's life? In spite of having once saved mine. He saved your life? How'd that happen? It was 10 years ago, on a foggy night. What was to be the professor's final stroke had sent a wave of panic through the capital. So Clint Van Zieks had already been killed at this point then. Genshin and I were walking down some back streets at a late hour. Of course, at that point, I had no idea of the true nature of the man at my side. All of a sudden... Damn it, Pete, you're coming with us. We were surrounded. All of our assailants were armed with pistols, their faces obscured by scarves. Clint was not only from a noble heritage, he was a brilliant prosecutor as well. The scum of London hated the sight of him, and they had no sympathy for his younger brother either. I've been targeted several times already. Yeah, it's Van Zieks, alright. We got him. I could hear them murmuring amongst themselves. I knew they were after me. But just when I thought my time had come, if I let them kill you, Clint would never forgive me. It was Asogi's voice, just a whisper in my ear. After that, I don't remember exactly what happened. The next thing I know, there was silence all around. Genshin lay on the cobbled street. Blood was seeping from his left hand. He'd shielded me. Two days later, they arrested him on suspicion of being London's most notorious mass murderer ever, the Professor. How awful for you. All at once, I lost the brother I revered, and the foreign friend I'd held in such high regard. I'm so sorry, Lord Van Zieks. That's the end of my miserable tale. I never thought I'd recount it to anyone. Well, thank you for confiding in me. The Professor, the Reaper, and Inspector Gregson. I wonder just how intimately related they all are. I still can't quite believe that Gregson was essentially the Reaper. Giving assassination orders to Giselle Brett. Mr. Naruhodo, let's go and inform my father. I'm sure our government will want to hear about this new information. Oh, that means I get to meet your daddy, Susie. Hooray! Yes, alright. Let's head back to the Great Waterloo Hotel then. Yeah, we will do that next time. I'll see you guys then.
Have no doubt, I'm in control. You may think chasing ghosts is